Hey, happy Wednesday. This is Sophia. She's my dog. Hey, Sophie. We're headed for a walk, and I wanted to talk for a minute about a conversation I just had with a new client. And we did some goal setting with him, and I noticed a lot of the goals he was coming up with for himself for the year were all strangely related. And what I noticed was he had some stuff in there that was definitely going to derail his progress for the year. And it's stuff that's epidemic in a lot of the personal development space that I encounter. And I would imagine that you encounter it too. And what I noticed, a lot of the trends in what he was talking about, we're not only going to harm his self-confidence, it was also going to make him less productive and less efficient and lead to a much unhappier life. And actually, you know, at the end of the year, he's going to end up being very unsuccessful with what he wanted to accomplish. And what I noticed about his goals was he was focusing almost exclusively on where he was weak, where he was coming up short. And there's this trend to sharpen our weaknesses and turn those into strengths. And what we found in brain science, as you look at a lot of stuff going on in neuroscience, would indicate that that's really a poor strategy, because we're bad at stuff for a reason. We're wired to succeed at certain things and fail at others because we're different, right? We have different genetic traits, different backgrounds, histories, different wiring. And this wiring helps us develop our innate strengths, weaknesses, and personality characteristics, and so on. So what I've found is people who focus on what they're doing wrong, where they're weak, what that does is they disengage from the task at hand. If their weakness is centered around their work, their business, they disengage from that work, they become less productive, and they become less confident, which then causes them to disengage even more, and causes them to become less productive, so that at the end of the year, this person feels like a failure. And so year over year over year, they begin to disengage from life. And that's really the wrong way to go, to be quite honest with you. And I think, you know, if you have a business, if you're leading a team, and you're focusing on where people are weak, if you're in relationships with people and you're constantly talking to them about where they're coming up short and having them focus on areas where they're just not innately good at a particular skill or element of the relationship, what's happening is you're driving disengagement, you're driving a person to become less confident, you're driving unhappiness in those people's lives. So the converse really is true, is really quite simple, is to focus on people's strengths. Focus on your own strengths. And if you look at people who are very successful in life, what they do is they focus on those 1 or 2, 3 things where they're really, really good, and they become masters of those things. So most of us, what we do is we focus on our weaknesses, and in the places where we're strong, we don't really hammer down on those and try to sharpen them. And so we just stay kind of naturally good in those areas, but we never become experts. And it's the people who become experts in areas where they're naturally good and gifted. They're going to become very successful in whatever it is that they want to do. And so I would encourage you to focus on where you're strong. And if you don't know what your strengths are, there's a couple things that you can do. You know, one is to look back at what you're good at when you were a kid, before life kind of covered you up and maybe made you a little bit jaded. Look at what you're good at when you were a kid. And even if it's something very generic and general, like being creative, writing, art, whatever those things are, just start there, and then you can kind of dig in and zero in on precisely where your innate strengths and talents are. Now for me, the best way to find where you're strong is just to get in the game. I mean, you don't know if you're really going to be good at something or not until you get in the game, give it a go, and see if you have some natural talent and ability there. And if you do, then you can sharpen that. If you don't, then it'll become quickly apparent, and you can eject and go try something else. So, and that's what I encouraged this client to do, was to go back, redo his goals, look at where he was strong, and figure that out, and then give it another go another time. So that's that. Listen, I wanted to let you know I have a 3-part video series coming up that I would love for you to engage in, because one of my strengths is creating courses, teaching, talking, and educating people on how to improve their life. And so I've created a few courses, and they're not finished yet, but what I wanted to do was share with you 3 three modules, really the essence of three modules I've created that will make a huge difference in your life if you can put some principles into action. So the first thing I'll talk about tomorrow is really how your brain understands and comprehends time, and then how to leverage that information to prolong your life. Now, that's a pretty cool concept, right? So we'll talk about that tomorrow. On Friday, what I'll talk about is why it's hard for people to take responsibility for their lives and blame others instead. So we'll talk about what's going on in your brain in those instances, and then what you can do to create a life that's more aligned with taking responsibility, holding yourself accountable for your results, so that you can actually create a life that's awesome for yourself. And then on Saturday, what I'll do is create a video where we're going to talk about how habits are created and why bad habits are really hard to break, and why good habits are really hard to form and get to stick. And then I'll tell you three very, very simple, crazy simple things that you can do on a daily basis to not only create new habits that are good for you, but to also make sure that those habits stick. And at the end of the year, if you haven't achieved a major goal for yourself, you're going to be way, way, way further down the road than you ever have been before with that goal. So that is it for today. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit. Have an awesome day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.